Welcome, book nerds, to this episode of the podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with James Ponti, author of the book series City Spies, and his latest book, City Spies: Golden Gate. The sequel focuses on the teenage spies as they've just finished up a mission thwarting a villain at an eco-summit in Paris. Meanwhile, there's some new intel regarding a potential mole within the organization, offering the spies a lead that take them to San Francisco, California. They soon discover that they're also being investigated, and they're caught up in an exciting adventure filled with rogue missions and double agents. Let's get to it and learn more about James and his latest book. All right, book nerds, I'm now speaking with James Ponti, the author of City Spies 2. Thanks for joining us, James. We really appreciate it.
It's a thrill for me to be here.
So before we jump into the real interview, just for our listeners and anybody who isn't familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your book?
Sure. My name is James Ponti, and I write middle grade fiction, mostly spy and mystery fiction is how it's turned out. My background is in kids television. I worked for a long time at Disney Channel and Nickelodeon and PBS, and that was really the direction I took for a long time, and decided to try to find my way into books, and that led to kids' books, and I have really loved it. City Spies and City Spies 2 are my 7th and 8th novels, and City Spies came out last year. The idea of the series is it's about this group of kids, 5 kids from around the world, who've each kind of fallen through the cultures of their different societies. And they all more or less get adopted by this spy from MI6, British intelligence. And he basically raises them as a family of spies. They live in a covert base in the north of Scotland, and they kind of get sent on these missions where MI6 feels like adults would stand out too much and be too obvious. And it's a little bit experimental and a little bit accidental, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for me to write. First one came out last year, seemed to be well received, which is really a thrill, and always you never know what to expect. And book 2, Golden Gate, comes out in March, on March 9th of this year.
Awesome. Excited to hear that. And also congratulations on having having that many books out and having this one coming out real soon.
It's funny and it's great and it's wonderful. I always wanted to be a writer from elementary school on, but I was not a strong reader as a kid, which is why I pursued and studied screenwriting in college and thought television screenwriting would be my thing, because I just didn't think I could write full books necessarily. And to be on 8 or 9 or whatever it is now, I'm writing number 9 right now. It's pretty crazy.
Looking back, did you ever think that you would get to this point?
No. This is completely unexpected. This is lovely. I mean, it's really wonderful. What I love about it is television writing is in and of itself kind of competitive, but kids television writing is the friendliest area of that industry. Very supportive, but still there's a limit to only so many episodes of this show, so only so many writers can get an episode. What's really kind of great in the book world, which I didn't expect because I kind of came to it later in my career, is that the writers are all super supportive of each other, not competitive at all. Tonight I get on a Zoom session with about 7 other, we do it every week. It's about 7 or 8, all best-selling, award-winning author kind of types. And we just have a great time talking about what's going on, what we're working on, and how we can help each other, and goofing about the world. And it's such a great community to be a part of. And then the readership community and the bookseller community, it's been this amazing surprise to find this career for me.
That's fantastic. No, it's always definitely easier to do anything, I think, in life when you definitely have a supportive community behind you, encouraging you and reaching out and helping you and just overall being supportive. That definitely can make a world of difference for sure.
When I was at an event early-ish in this part of my career, and I was having dinner with Lori Hall Sanderson, who's an amazing author. And she said, James, the key to remember with us is we're not competitors, we're co-conspirators. And that just really struck a positive nerve with me. And I tell myself that every day. We're all co-conspirators in this world of kid lit, and it is so much fun to be part of.
Awesome. No, I absolutely love that. So looking at these books, they're all about, spies, and, I know it mentions MI6, especially because you just said it's located in Scotland. How did you go about deciding where, which agency that they would be part of, and how did you go about learning about the spy world, and how much of it is actually based on real world situations, and how much of it is kind of just more, science fiction? Because I doubt you could just call up MI6 and be like, hey, can I come down for a toy and talk to your spies?
No, you can't. Although I got the greatest email the other day. I got an email from this librarian who is a fan of the books and uses them with her school. And she wrote back, and I'm not making this up. She honestly said, my husband used to be the director of the CIA, and I love your books. And if you have any questions, he'll be glad to talk to you. So I'm saving that card to use that at a later date, but for research. But I do research a number of ways. My brother was actually a diplomat. He was a U.S. ambassador, and he doesn't give me specific info, but sometimes I pick his brain for things. I got a lot of books. There's a lot of great books out there, nonfiction books with a lot of research in it. And, it is a fascinating world. And I am writing a book that's very unrealistic. I'm writing a book about a group of spies between the age of 12 and 15. And I know there aren't that, although the NSA does use high school kids who are great on computers, but that's a whole other story. Since I am writing such an unreal thing, my goal is to make everything else as real as possible. And that gives you a little buy-in to it. So I do a fair amount of research, what I can, on the spy world. Some of the things that I write about are inspired by actual missions that I've read about, or operations, or 3 degrees of separation from one, because you don't want to make it a direct thing. And I research the places very much. The idea of one of the things in the book is that all the kids, they come from all over, and so they call each other, their code names are the cities that they're from. And so there's a character named Brooklyn, a character named Sydney, a character named Paris, and city and travel is a huge part of the plot lines in the books. Each just like a James Bond movie wants to have all these great settings, I really want to have a number of settings where the reader feels like they're traveling to these amazing places. And so that's a lot of research also, to try to find, okay, where would be the best place in Paris? Where would be the best place in London and New York and wherever it is that I'm going in these books? And for this upcoming book, San Francisco, which I tend to pick the cities that I love the most because they're fun to write about. Through the first 2 books, I don't think the characters have been anywhere that I haven't been, with the exception of Oxford. I wrote a scene at Oxford University, and I've not been there. So I talked to a couple people who went to school there to get the research. And I didn't need a ton of research for it, so that was okay. But I try to write about places that I go to. I go and I take dozens and dozens of pictures at each location. And then when I'm working on the manuscript, I open those pictures on my computer screen and I look at them while I'm writing, and while I'm trying to come up with stuff, just to try to make it as realistic as possible.
So of all the places from that the missions take place and the characters from, so you actually have been to all of those places?
Yes. I haven't been hijacked on the North Sea, but I've been on the North Sea in a boat, so that part's good, right?
Well, we're glad for that.
Yeah, yeah, but But even that, so I've been to the places, and that's an important part for me. There are aspects that I haven't been. So there's a hijacking on a marine research vessel in the opening page of book 2, and so for that I called the oceanographic staff at the Scripps Institute down in San Diego, which has the RV Sally Ride, which is the one of, if not the greatest research vessels in the world. And I asked the person there, I said, hey, here's this thing I'm working on. Could we talk for a while? And, she walked me for an hour through a lot of information, including, I said, this may be an odd question, but like, where would you hide if you had to hide on the ship? Because my characters have to hide at one point. And she said, oh, well, sometimes when we're taking these ships out and it's just the crew and there's not scientists on board, we'll play a game like ultimate hide and seek stuff. I have the greatest place to hide. You hide in the stern thruster machine room. And I'm like, never in a million years would I have come up with the stern thruster machine room. But that's apparently where you want to hide on one of these ships if they're overtaken by Scandinavian terrorists like they are in the first page of Golden Gate City, or Golden Gate.
Wow, that's crazy. And hopefully whoever told you that, their shipmates aren't listening to this, because then they'll know where she's hiding all the time.
That's given away. Yeah. Well, and if you turn that way, at least it's a good story for her to tell. But yeah, that's where she hides in these games. And, and then I worked for a long time also at the History Channel. I used to do documentaries all over the place. And when I would do them, because you have a camera and I'm inquisitive, making these documentaries, people let you do things and see things, and that stuff really fun. So I've shot documentaries in San Francisco. So for me, writing this book, so much of it taking place in San Francisco, I was able to go back on stuff that I didn't even get to use some of it. I've driven a cable car, so I know what that experience is like, not to see a cable car or even ride on it, but I know what the experience is like to grab hold of the cable, to let go of the cable, all these kind of components of that. And all that stuff really helps to write about. A very difficult thing for me right now is I'm writing book 3, and book 3 is taking place in places I haven't been. And because of COVID, I can't go to. So book 3 will be the first time that I'm really writing significant amounts in any of the books that I've written without the kind of research. It wasn't for City Spies, but when I was doing the Frame series, which is the series I wrote, which is about kind of a Sherlock Holmes character in Washington, D.C., I said a thing, a big part of the mystery was set in the Library of Congress. They took me around behind the scenes. They let me hold Thomas Jefferson's copy of the Federalist Papers. I got to see up close what were in Lincoln's pockets the night he was killed. I mean, it's amazing what research, and people love books. And it's amazing how you can just call up and say, hey, I would like to find out more about this. And people, I think they're also motivated by, I know doctors and lawyers hate to see TV shows about doctors and lawyers that have no bearing on reality. You can't just do that. And so people are so happy that you care to get it right, that they'll show you stuff. And often the stuff they show you will give you far more ideas than what you come to ask for. So I really try to approach those with open-ended questions to see where they might lead, and find out, oh wow, you're kidding. I heard this story about the Lincoln Bible that I can't find it written anywhere, but the person in the Library of Congress told me this great story. These kinds of things are really useful, because I think when people read the books, I know a lot of teachers have told me this, they'll have their kids Google and talk about and look up stuff in the book because they're curious if it's real. And whenever they find out it's real, which is almost all this stuff it is, then it just engages them that much more in the book.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that's so cool. And I absolutely love when I read books, and I, just like you said, it's something that I'm like, I read that, I'm like, I wonder if that's true or not. And then you look it up and you find out it is, you just dive so much more into it. So I as a reader of books myself, I do appreciate that. So thank you for doing that and putting that kind of work in detail, not just making up story. Yes, it's a made up story, but including so many real factual information in there is so great. And as a fellow reader, that really means a lot to me.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Flatiron Building in New York City.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a gorgeous building. So in a series I wrote called Dead Cities about the undead who live underneath Manhattan, I had to use it. I wanted to use the building, but just as a fan of buildings, you only get so much out of that. So I really read a lot about the history, and I stumbled across this amazing thing, which is the elevator in the Flatiron Building doesn't go all the way to the top. It goes all the way up to the second highest floor, and then there's another one floor elevator next to it. So you have to go up to the top, to the second to top floor, get off, go out in the hallway, get back in another elevator, and go up that one last floor. And they changed the height after they started building it, is why that happened. But I thought, well, that's a fun thing to now make a plot point, because that's a detail I would probably have never thought of, or people would say, oh, that's so silly. But if anyone were to go to check it out, they go, oh, wait, that is real. So I made that one extra floor a whole plot, and so that's why the researching really helps, because sometimes it leads you to really fun things that you wouldn't have found otherwise.
That's super, super cool. When you're writing a book, and I've interviewed a good amount of art, writers at this point, and I always like asking, because everyone has a different take on it. What do you find for you is the hardest part about writing a book? Sometimes people say it's they outline it and they come up with every detail before writing it. Sometimes it's the beginning of the book. Sometimes it's how to twist tie it all together. Some people plan out, some people just start writing. What's your process like, and what do you think is the hardest part for you?
That is a wonderful question, and a hard one for me to answer, because I don't know that I do it the same way enough to have figured all this out yet. Again, my training, good or bad, was in screenwriting. And so I had to kind of stumble my way through, how do you write a book and what's the best way? And then someone will say something like, oh, of course, outlining, that's a good idea. I should have thought of that. Although I still don't really outline. For me, the first third is the hardest, because it's the layering in of everything that you want that's going to be important, but not, when you're writing mysteries, especially, or you're writing, even a spy thriller that's not quote unquote a mystery still has elements of figuring out and solving with it. It's really important not to make that obvious. So you're layering stuff into that first third to then benefit, planting seeds that you can then reap throughout the second 2/3 of the book. So I spent a disproportionate time writing that first third, and then things really pick up once you get past that, and really once you get into the last third. At that point, hopefully it's inertia is really going to pull you through, because if you've done the job right. So I struggle with that, and I struggle with, or struggle's not the right word. I think because we have to work at making exposition not boring, which again is the first third problem, is really complex, and that's a difference in jumping from script writing to fiction writing, which is I can't rely on the visual like I could in script writing. You see these things about a character because they're on screen when you're writing a script. You have to figure out, what do I want to describe, what's relevant, what's not giving away plot. If it's really important that someone's left-handed, you can make them left-handed in the script and no one notices. If you say it in a book, it's the left-handed part's going to be a key part. So trying to layer in and hide exposition. But it's all, I think, really fun. It's not, and the fact that I don't fully outline, that I do a general outline, and then I do some specific parts where it's complex. it's fun discovery for me to go through it and kind of see, oh wait, now I can do this, and oh these characters, and especially now I'm writing the third book.
Mm-hmm.
If I've done my job right, I've given these 5 kids who are the characters, and then 4 other supporting roles maybe that are strongly recurring. I've given them a rich enough thing that I get to really, well, no, she should do that, or he should do that, and no, he would know this, and that's fun to write because now they've taken on kind of a life of their own.
It's interesting. I've heard with a lot of the authors that I'm speaking to, I've heard that becomes kind of a common theme that the books, they start out, they start writing it, and then the books seem to kind of take on their own personality and a mind of their own, and the story and the characters almost seem to like do their own thing, and the authors just say they're just writing what the characters are doing. It's almost like the book's writing itself.
Yeah, I hear better authors say that. I still feel like mine don't write themselves as much as I wish they would at points. Um, for me, what it is a lot, and this goes back to the television, and when I would produce television, which is there is if I was making a documentary, if I was making not a documentary, just a regular narrative show, I would have to scout locations, I would have to hire a cast, and I would have to figure out how to make all those things work together. And that worked for my creative process. So I do a lot of that here. I scout the locations. When I was writing this book, I was out in San Francisco, and I walked around places that I knew, but I walked around saying, well, where would the characters want to go, and where would they want to eat, and what does that give me? And then one of the things, if you worked on a TV show long enough, that you get to deal with, which is actors who feel like their characters don't get treated right. And you'll be a knock on your door in the script room and be like, hey, my guy hasn't done anything really interesting for 2 or 3 episodes. What's up with that? And it's not intentional. I'll write something for that. And so I find myself doing that for the characters the same way. I'm like, well, Kat and Rio haven't been heard from in the last 4 chapters. They would be upset if that's the case. And no, I'm not like, it's not a break of reality, but it's it's acknowledgement that there are kids out there who those are their favorite characters, and they don't want them to disappear for 5 or 6 chapters. And also the book will be more well-rounded if we keep touch with everyone, and that's when you have an ensemble cast like I do. You need to kind of think that way.
No, I think that's awesome. Now, I know, a lot of your books have gotten fantastic reviews. Do you ever go online and read what people say about your books? And do you think that, consciously or unconsciously kind of like influences how you write? Like, if people say they love the first book, or I loved, this aspect, do you try to like keep that in, or do you think that's makes you less likely to change things up? Does that influence you in any way?
It influences me way more than it should. Or actually, I read them way more than it should. I don't know if it influences me much. You're curious. You want to know. And I have a pretty thick skin. I understand, first of all, the goal is not for everyone to like the book. Because then it wouldn't really be about anything. It needs to be that it really engages a certain group of readers, and hopefully enough of them to sustain it. But you go and you read a bad review, and it's like, oh my goodness, on Goodreads or something like that. Actually, last night I just happened to stumble across one on a tremendous day. I had all kinds of good things happening with books yesterday. And then in the middle of it, I just read this one review, and I told my wife, I said, this is ridiculous. This has been a great day, book world, for us. And this one review is just sticking in my head. And that's not smart, because that person has their opinions, and they are absolutely right. Everyone's opinions are right for them. What I do like to do, though, I do like when there are avid readers, and I'm lucky enough to have those and get to talk to some of them. There's kids in my neighborhood who want to come by every day and talk about books, which is great. I like to know which parts engage them. Not that I'm going to, but that's more to not forget, oh, wait, that's right. That's what they like. You know, it's my job not to give them exactly what they say they want, because I think I want sugar. I think I want sugar. Then, oh, I have too much sugar, right? We're cooking this recipe, but it's important to remember that, all right, there needs to be some sweetness in it. There needs to be some this in it. Oh, I love to ask kids who their favorite character is, because I think when I got started, I always assumed that it would be whoever the main character was. This has been through all the books that I read, and it's all over the place, and I find it telling that for the certain readers, these characters connect with them even in short spaces. So that influences me to remember to be true to the characters, but I try not to let reviews. It's sometimes when you're down and you want to go look at a couple 5-star reviews on Goodreads, I think that's all right. But for the most part, you need to just trust it. But kids will track me down and send me emails, and I read those, and those give me a lot of information.
Awesome. Yeah. And unfortunately, you can't please everyone. And honestly, like you said, it's actually better not to, because then if you try to please everyone, then your work is going to end up being, I think, like really bad, and in any industry, because it's going to be so bland, because you can't. There's no way to please everyone. Right. So, and I think criticism can be good, because you realize why people don't like a certain thing. Maybe the plot was too slow or too fast, or character, it can help you realize, like, oh, maybe I should look into improving, making certain aspects, speed things up or slow things down. I think it can all, critical feedback is always good.
I'll tell you one thing that did probably in the back of my mind make an impact. The first book, there's two different approaches when you're doing a series, whether or not you do an origin story or not. And I always do the origin story. And so the first book is about one of the characters being brought onto the team. And so we start with her. And so she doesn't become a spy until like chapter 5 or 6 or 7, somewhere in there. We follow her into it so the reader can also join along with her. And a couple, again, really positive reactions, great reviews. A couple of kids especially were like, I thought it was slow, but then it really kicked on. I thought, okay, I wouldn't have changed how I wrote it, but I appreciate that they want something exciting from the get-go. And book 1 starts with the hijacking of the ship on paragraph 1. I thought, I am going to get those readers hooked to the first 4 chapters, and then I'll handle, like I said, the exposition stuff that gets kind of hard. And so that might have been a reaction. And so far, in the limited amount of reaction I've got from this book, the response has been really positive. So maybe that was a good thing to pick up from the readers.
Absolutely. So where will people be able to pick up a copy of this book? And if they want to reach out to you or follow your work on social media, sure, or send you an email or a website, where can they find that information?
Well, they should find the book anywhere they buy books. I'm a huge fan of independent bookstores, and certainly independent bookstores have been great to me and help kind of promote the books when they weren't heard of. But I'm also a fan of Barnes & Noble. Wherever you get books, I always joke that they're easy to find. They're right between James Patterson and Jason Reynolds. On the shelf, there's these huge sections for both of them, and there's this little bit in the middle where you can find me. But on social media, I have a website, JamesPonti.com, has a lot of information on it. I have another website, Renegades of Middle Grade. The Renegades of Middle Grade is a group of middle grade authors who I founded. This group. There's like 24 of us. You can find about all our books and kind of the ideas. If you like any of us, you'll like all of us. And then on social media, it is at James Ponti on Twitter and at James Ponti Books on Instagram. So I'd love to meet you readers anyhow, any way. And I really appreciate the time of being on the show.
Fantastic. And we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here at JeanBookNerd. It was absolutely fantastic talking to you, and I'm incredibly happy for your success and that, you've got a second book coming out real soon and you're working on the third, and I wish you the absolute best of luck. And I have no doubt that your first book was a success and that the second one and the third one will follow.
Well, I hope so. And thank you so much, because, like I said, what the great find of this career for me is the community of readers and book lovers that surround it, and be part of that in promoting books. I can't appreciate that any more than that, and it's wonderful.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. That's all for now. It was great talking with James and learning about his new book in the series. It's always great to know that authors put so much time and research into their work to make them as real and authentic as possible. Take care for now, and we'll be back soon with another episode. James, any final thoughts for our listeners before we go?
I'm James Ponti, the author of City Spies Golden Gate, and you're listening to JeanBookNerd.com.